Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. We get to travel the back roads, the main roads. We get to explore the state of Jefferson. That's home for me. It's where I grew up. Well, in fact, I was born down here. And I get to meet people. Sometimes the introductions to them is very unusual. Now, today's guest, I happen to be watching TV with my lunch one noon. There I was, and a local fella came on and said, "Hello, Joe." "Oh, no, my name's Joe, right?"
Yeah, I said, "I'm Joe Spurgeon." I think I was talking about the high price of gas that day on,
Yes,
on Channel
Joe. 10. You were. Channel 10's your station.
Yeah, I'm on Channel 10 News at lunchtime every Wednesday, and talk about stocks or investing. Sometimes I talk about things that influence the market, and that day we were talking about Hurricane Katrina and the price of gasoline when you saw me.
Wow. And you compared the price of gasoline, and that's what tickled me, because I thought, I know we all complain because we have to have gas. I mean, I live 12 miles outside city limits, but it's not quite that far to grocery stores or to gas stations. But it affects us all.
It really does. And, for some people, especially people that are on a tight budget, if the price of that gasoline goes up, they don't have any other choice other than, to drive. And so that they're really making some choices on, are they putting gas in the car, or are they doing something else for their family? The other thing that's difficult about the price of gasoline is that when it goes up, it really doesn't help anybody here in the valley.
You're right.
But if you look at the price of our homes, they've actually gone up. If you're looking at inflation, they've gone up a lot more than the price of gasoline
You
has.
pointed that out to us.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise, I mean, gas has it's gone up, but nothing like our houses. Or you mentioned a couple other things that went.
Price of education, college education, price of health care, all those things have gone up much more. And you, when you called, you were talking about postage stamps. And that is one thing that I didn't mention, but you were talking about the penny postcard.
Oh, I remember the penny postcard. Yeah. You could write to anybody in the U.S. for 1 penny. And that's a nice little postcard, and just happen to have a few of those. But now to put enough postage on there, it's up 23 times since my youth.
And what would be interesting, and I don't have the numbers on this, but we were talking about, has gasoline gone up 23 times? I think the thing with gasoline that people get excited about is they can see the price going up every day. And it's also something that they can't get away from, that they have to pay that price.
Right, because I think 19 or 24 cents or things like that I can remember, but I probably wasn't even driving then. I was writing postcards, but not driving.
So you remember the postcards, but not the price of the gas.
and because I'm an archivist, and that's the nice word my brother calls junk collectors, I have some of those postcards, but of course gas prices you kind of forget.
Oh yeah.
But you remember those gas lines we were in, 12? Oh, maybe you're too young for gas lines.
No, I remember the gas lines in the late 70s and very early 80s. If you look at, and that's another thing about gasoline, if you look back at the gas crunch in the 70s, the price per gallon wasn't what it is today. But we were paying a greater percentage of our disposable income for energy back in the 70s than we are today.
Well, Joe, there's one other factor you've left out.
What's that?
That's the hour or 2 hours you sat in a gas line burning gas to get gas.
That's true.
And then you'd get to this pump. Maybe 2 cars in front of you. Out would come some kid. Usually, it was his first job, and now he was king because he had the sign that said, "out of gas." And there you were. in the gas line.
Well, I guess if you look at it that way, it was a lot more expensive back then.
Joe, I just want to hear about you. Besides your job over there at the TV station, that's not the, 5 minutes a week.
Right. I'm actually not employed by KTVL. I come on as a guest. I'm a financial advisor with Linsco Private Ledger, and I have been for 6 years.
We understand on as a guest. That's what you're doing here.
Absolutely.
Unpaid. That's what I'm doing here. Unpaid.
I'm not getting paid today? Oh, geez. I was looking for the check after the show was over.
I offered you a glass of water. Don't forget
That's going to be
Joe.
it. Okay.
You know, it's true. Volunteerism is what makes this valley work. I mean, you're in the Rogue Valley. What brought you to Southern Oregon, Northern California area?
Well, let me back up a little bit when we're talking about history, and I'll talk a little bit about my grandmother.
Oh, please do.
And my grandmother lived outside of Portland, and when I was looking for a place to go to college, I'm originally from Colorado, from outside of Denver, and my mother's side of the family were talking about coming out to Oregon. Had some good schools, and I also thought that college was a good time to make that break, from the family. I thought for some reason that I needed to go away to college. I'm not sure I agree with that now, but
18.
I've got to go away, and so I came out and I went to Linfield College in McMinnville.
Right. Oh,
And,
gorgeous campus.
It's beautiful, and a great teacher-to-student class ratio. And one of the things that enabled me to go to college was my grandmother invested in the stock market when we were very little. And so my grandmother put together a college fund for each of her 12 grandchildren.
12?
She had 12 grandchildren, yeah. It was interesting that my mother and her 2 sisters and her brother, there's 4 of them, and they each had 3 children. So it's all, it's all working out in these nice little, yeah. And my youngest cousin is going to community college right now, but the other 11 of us all have at least a BA degree. And I think that a lot of that, I would attribute quite a bit of that to my grandmother setting up that fund. And also when I was going through school, it wasn't, are you going to college? It's where, and so education was, and so that's how I got to Oregon.
Okay.
And then after graduating, I had a degree in teaching. And one of the places that offered me a job was Lakeview. And so I went to Lakeview for 8 years. And I taught school over there, and I coached basketball, and I coached track. And in the wintertime, we would come over to Medford. And in Lakeview, we'd be freezing.
Right.
And we'd come over to Medford, and we'd get off the bus and stop at the mall or stop somewhere to have a bite to eat, and the grass would be green and it'd be 50 degrees, and
warm day.
So that's kind of in a roundabout way how I got over here to
because
to Medford,
Lakeview.
to the Rogue Valley.
What do you remember of Lakeview's winters?
Oh, they were pretty brutal. A lot of snow and ice, and Lakeview is a great town. The toughest thing about Lakeview is you're so far away from other places. If you want to drive to Medford, it's a 3-hour drive. If you want to go to Reno, it's almost 4 hours. And so it was tough to get around when you were there.
Oh, with snow and wind?
Oh, yeah.
Snow and wind, but not much rain. Is that right? Lakeview is in that drier part of eastern.
We'd get a lot of snow. I mean, a lot of times the roads would close for a day or an afternoon or something like that. But you're right, not a lot of moisture.
Yeah, kind of like Klamath, only more so.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people will think, oh, Lakeview, that's right next to Klamath. No, that's like saying Medford and Klamath are right next to each other. So.
Only there's not a hill in between. There's open spaces.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's going over Bly Mountain in a few places you have to navigate some hills, but nothing like Lake of the Woods. So.
Yeah, that is a mountain. Mm-hmm. That closes it. Well, you talked about walking around a bunch. I mean, you've taken us from when you were a college kid coming. Did these shoes actually come with you to college?
Oh yeah.
I mean, they weren't new then?
No, I got those shoes when I was 16. And
Is that graduation time? I mean, fancy shoes for, I mean, these are leather uppers, right?
yeah, I can't remember why. My father, for some reason, bought me a three-piece suit when I was 16. And
Dads like to do that.
I don't know if there was a special occasion,
Rite
but
of passage,
I got
think.
those shoes. Yeah.
Same time.
Same time. And
But, folks, if I show you the truth about them, it's just that the dye, the color, is gone. But man, those are, I mean,
I had
looks
them
like
resold.
Oh, I was just going to say, they hardly look worn.
oh no, I got a lot of wear out of those. But I think that's something that, you know, in my job with people, you know, when they're struggling to make ends meet, or they're struggling maybe to put money in their 401k plan at work, or to invest, you know, the shoes and things like that is something that I talk about. That, you know, how much money do we spend on things that maybe we don't need, or that we already have one of? And so every now and again I wear those shoes, and we showed those shoes on KTVL. I actually took one off one day and held it up.
Well, I happen to have a pair of Birkenstocks that came from when our son was a student at the University of Oregon, and Birkenstocks were new.
Uh-huh.
So Mom, Dad, and son all got a pair of them. Well, mine had actually delaminated the sole. I mean, it was just falling apart. And I found that there was a repairman in town who could get new soles, brand new Birkenstock bottoms, take those little leather straps, 2 little leather straps, and put them on the Birkenstocks. Saved me $20. And I felt so kind of like you and your shoes, proud of them.
Yeah.
Because this isn't the only thing you've saved. You've saved, obviously, in your business, but look at this, folks.
That's older than the shoes.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. Tortoise shell or, I said only 4. 3 were missing.
Am I missing 4 teeth on my comb?
No, I think this one's just bent a little. What's the story about your comb?
Well, it's kind of the same story as my shoes, just, you know, it's kind of that idea of being thrifty or frugal. I like this comb. It's serviceable. I've had it for over 20 years. I mean, it is something that I could go out and buy a new one, but I look at it and I think, you know, why would I do that? And I think a lot of this, I talked a little bit about my grandma. My grandfather lived through the Depression. And, you know, I think that's one of my goals is that if anything like that ever happened again, that I'd be able to take care of myself and my family. And, you know, so I think that leads to some of my frugal nature.
Well, I think it fits in with Southern Oregon, Northern California, our pioneering industrious. I don't know if you're into gardening, but my goodness, people are so self-reliant. Canning's still fashionable, sewing's still fashionable, but this gardening thing has now gotten to a fine art with the organizations, the master gardeners and things like this. If you go to the county fairs, you see what they've put up. I mean, they get the best of the best. Maybe they even go out to the orchards over in Phoenix and pick it and take it home and can it. I did that this year, and it was fun. The whole thing, we did it as a family. You know, that's about saving too, isn't it?
Well, I think that, you know, being self-reliant is important, or being able to, you know, survive, you know, if something goes awry a little bit. And, you know, the idea of gardening, I think another thing that I think of along with the shoes and the comb is, you know, not extending yourself on credit.
Oh, preach it, man.
Oh.
Preach it.
I mean, if you're overextended credit-wise, and, you know, you lose your job or you lose some hours on that job.
Or you get sick like we have. You know, that is, I mean, you never know when you're going to have a heart attack like Doug had, or find you had cancer like I had. And you're kind of, you need a cushion.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at our society, and we were talking about this on the phone, you know, people used to get excited when they had things paid off. And, you know, I remember my grandpa telling me about mortgage burning parties.
I did that once.
Did you?
Couldn't get the mortgage to burn.
Oh. Well, maybe you still owed a little on it. Maybe that was a sign. I don't know.
It was a windy day.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're out there and the wind is blowing the match out.
But you know, you had that as kind of an idea or a belief, it seems, of past generations. And now it seems like more of a rite of passage for us today is getting our first credit card, or, you know, keeping up with the Joneses and how much, you know, we can spend on things.
And speaking of that, just how many of those credit cards does one carry?
How many do you have in there? Yeah.
Fortunately, this one's AAA, so that doesn't count.
All right, so we won't count that one.
And this one's Red Cross, so we don't have to count that one.
All right.
You know, I'm going to speak for both of these, but especially the Red Cross card. You know, it tells how much blood I've given, my blood type, and so in case I need it, this one's going to be valuable. They don't have to do a blood typing and all that. That one's a driver's license. So I'm really down to kind of gas card. I said gas can, and hopefully I don't need one. But there was a reason that I did it, and it's the same thing you're talking about. Wanting to be debt-free.
It's a very liberating thing to be either be debt-free, and not everybody can. I mean, you know, not everybody's going to be able to go out and buy a house in this valley, for example. I mean, I see that as more of an investment.
And I really hardly call that a debt.
Yeah. I mean, because that's probably going to go up in value, and that mortgage payment every month is an investment, whereas a car is going to depreciate in value, say 50% over the first 3 years, and so that's more of a debt instrument. Anytime somebody puts something on their credit card and doesn't pay it off, they're just basically saying, well, I'd like to pay more for that item than what the sticker says.
And more is, I mean, just multiplies, right?
Right.
I really think that that's so liberating to pay off. I mean, it's kind of party time.
You feel better, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You got some notes over there. Let's jump over to what you have written down about Southern Oregon and you.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to do just for a second is I've talked about my grandparents, and I've got a daughter that's 3 years old, and one of the things that I'm trying to do with her is I'm trying to teach her, not right now, but one of the things I want to do is teach her some of these things about finances. When we get our house paid off, I want to have a mortgage burning party so she can see that, and hopefully that'll, you know, stick in her brain. I save my change and I put it in a little silver piggy bank that has her name on it, and then I take it to the bank about 2 or 3 times a year. And when she gets a little bit older, that account will be hers, and, you know, to do with as she pleases. And she'll learn very early on, you know, about keeping a balance, and, you know, well, we bought something and, you know, our value dropped, and so there's a lot of things that I think that, you know, in Southern Oregon or, you know, just everywhere, that we need to teach our kids about money so they don't get into the same types of habits or problems that we have.
One of the things I learned early was at church, and giving, whether it was an offering or a tithe, which is a 10%, didn't really decrease my lifestyle. It was like, you know, so then you learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and half of that, or 1 dime or 1 penny out of 10, and by the time I was, I don't know, I guess my folks started that count for me at the bank when I was just real little. I know they started my brother's account with the first $5 gold piece my dad ever got, and the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And years later, he said, you know, might have been better to put it safe someplace and wait for the $5. But at that time, it was that important to have $5 extra to start Henry's bank account. And that's a good feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a little book with my name on it.
And you had ownership then, yeah. And I think that with kids, I think one of the mistakes that maybe we make is we don't start teaching them about money and finances until maybe they're 17 or 18 years old. They take a personal finance class in high school, you know, if they're lucky. But I think we can do that much earlier. And,
like I said, 2 and 3 years old, they are already looking at money and knowing what's bigger and littler.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, my little sister got cash register for maybe her 5th birthday, and you know, that was just great fun for her. And you're learning at the same time you're playing. That's a custom in other countries where toys are really work-related, and so kids learn. A Monopoly game, isn't that the same thing? You know, you go to jail if you...
Well, I think that's, you know, I didn't think we'd get into this issue, but one of the things that I think you're brushing upon is you take a look at the games in the past, your Monopoly. You know, I remember playing Yahtzee as a kid, a game like chess. You know, a lot of the games that we had or that I had growing up with were really teaching games. I mean, we didn't maybe think we were learning as we were going through there, but we were. And that's one of the things that, you know, troubles me a little bit about, you know, the video games today. I'm not seeing a lot of, you know, cognitive development there. It's more the hand-eye coordination
and quick, fast. You know, not even think about it. Just react. Let's get back to your. I
remember in Monopoly. I'll just say this: I was a terrible negotiator with my brother and sister. I'll give you a railroad for boardwalk. You know that. I lost that game more times than I can remember until I.
Well, we really, that was not my favorite part of the thing, was that.
The trading.
The trading.
Yeah.
Because then I knew they were going to put on hotels and I'd be.
Got to pay the rent.
Got to pay the rent. And the taxes. But the taxes, as I recall, you had some choice there, whether you paid the $75 or a percentage of your...
Oh, the luxury tax.
Oh, that's what it was.
Luxury tax.
A percentage.
Yeah, there were all kinds of different squares there where you...
Go to jail, I remember that one.
If you didn't have a lot of money, you could pay the percentage, you know. But one of the things that I try to do in my current job is education. And I think that comes from my teaching background. That,
of course.
You know, you just try to teach people about, you know, what's out there financially. And one of the things I like to do too is I do a seminar a couple times a year, and in October I'm going to bring in an FBI agent to talk about identity theft, because that's something that is really going around Jackson and Josephine County and can be devastating to someone's credit, and it can take them a tremendous amount of time to get that all, you know, taken care of.
Oh, I heard from a friend out in, who gave too much information on the phone. You know, this is so-and-so from such and such, and it sounded so convincing. The voice was so mature. And so they just gave all their numbers and everything, and then they went, what have I done? Mm-hmm. You know, it only dawned on them. So when you talk about identity theft, it doesn't just mean they stole your purse or your car, but they got those numbers one way or another. I want to get to that piece of paper while we still have a couple of minutes, because it's clear full.
Well, I talked about quite a bit of the things on here. I talked about the piggy bank and my grandparents and the shoes. And
well, let's jump to why Southern Oregon. Why do you live here?
Oh, I think Southern Oregon is a great place to live. I think one of the first things I'd start with is, you know, just the people that I've met. I mean, I've got a friend from college that lives here in Grants Pass. I've got another one that lives in Ashland, but
You're right in between.
I'm right in between. I've told my wife a few times, if we ever move from the street we're on in Central Point, I don't think we'll ever find better neighbors. I think our neighbors would do just about anything for us. So that's the thing that keeps me here. I think one of the things I like being from Lakeview and before that Colorado, I love the weather. And I have clients that'll tell me, do you have the number in Arizona? Because I'm going to be gone for 6 months. And I think, why? And they say, I got to get out of here because it's winter time. And I think, we don't really have winter, in Medford or Ashland or Grants Pass.
Well, Crescent City, I think, or Brookings, that's the banana belt. I think, you compare it with other parts of the coast even.
Oh, yeah.
And Klamath doesn't have the trouble that Colorado has.
Right.
With closed airports and all that sort of stuff. Welcome. I'm just so glad to introduce you to Better Life Television, and I look forward to visiting you over at your station. What is that again?
KTVL, Channel 10, and I'm on about 12:20 on Wednesdays. If anybody wants to watch me talk about gasoline or college planning or anything else of that nature.
Or old shoes, folks.
Yes, we could talk about old shoes.
Now, these shoes just look like brand new. I think Mom could come along, or Dad, and teach you a little bit about shoe dye, but I think
if I polish them, they look good for about a day or two, and then they're back.
And the leather is as soft as... and that's what happens with some good wear. Mm-hmm. Things don't break down necessarily. They just get more comfy like slippers, right?
Or like your Birkenstocks.
Yes. Well, time has slipped by very fast. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for tuning in to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to meet you here every week. Thank you so much for tuning in.